Welcome to the Genesis of the Doctor podcast, where we're taking a journey through the time and space of the history of Doctor Who. I'm Joy.
And I'm Triss.
And for today's episode, we're finishing up Season 6, and also the Second Doctor era as a whole, with the War Games. I gotta say, I really liked this
And
one.
there's a lot to talk about. Yeah, I really liked this story. I thought I was actually excited to watch it the second time because we
Yeah,
watched the original release version, all 10 episodes, and the newly released colorization, which condenses the entire thing down to like an hour and a half or something like that.
yeah. Personally, I feel like I preferred the longer version, which is a bit surprising because it's
Yeah,
very long.
I I was surprised by that. I was really expecting I was expecting it to feel a bit drawn out, and that while I would have appreciated certain elements of it, I figured I was largely going to prefer the color version. But I actually preferred the original one. It was neat to watch the colorized one, and I'm sure if you haven't seen the original version of the War Games, it definitely gets the job done.
Yeah,
But watching it like the day after I finished the War Games, I was surprised at how much they cut and rearranged.
yeah. Like, they totally cut out, like, going to get all the leaders of the resistance and everything. It's just, like, not there anymore.
which, which was like an entire episode,
Yeah.
basically. They cut all that out. They cut out most of the banter and suspicions between the war chief and the security chief.
Yeah.
They completely cut most of that. So the little dynamic between the two of them in the colorized version feels a lot more out of nowhere for how bad it got, how quickly,
Yeah.
because they really didn't go into it as much. And then they also cut out a lot of the little bit of the reinforcing the mind control with like the glasses and all that.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes in the colorized version, it felt like the cuts were like way too quick. So it felt like
Yeah,
you were watching like a trailer for it rather than the actual episode.
yeah. Like the one that comes to mind exactly there is when the Doctor and Zoe get separated from Jamie in the barn, and Jamie starts running towards the not TARDIS as it disappears.
Yeah.
They cut like immediately, and it was kind of surprising they didn't give it like an extra second or two sitting on that shot. It definitely made it feel like the way it's cut together is a little bit rushed, but
Yeah.
there were also like some moments included in there that made no sense. Like right before that scene where the reason why Jamie steps away from that machine to go look at the door with Lady Jennifer is because they hear the shooting outside. The like 1 second shot they used was soldiers standing inside shooting out, which
Yeah.
made no sense.
Yeah.
But might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah.
Talking about the differences. Story as a whole, really, really good.
Yeah. It's great. And it definitely makes use of the 10 episodes very well, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Never once was I
It does.
feeling it was dragging.
Which is so surprising too, given the tendencies that this show has had thus far for like anything longer than 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this was actually like really well done.
Sometimes a 6-part episode feels too long, and this is the second longest story in all of Classic Who, and yet it works.
Mm-hmm. I think it does a really good job at making good use of that time and making each bit of time used feel important. Like, there was never really a moment where it felt like they were padding things out for time or wasting time. Everything felt purposeful and meaningful.
Yeah.
That it actually felt noticeable when certain scenes weren't included in the colorized version.
Yeah.
Making some elements of it a bit weaker, I think. Like, they really hammered in the idea of like just how they were reinforcing the mind control with, like, you know, the use of the glasses, the monocle, and the way people did or didn't trust each other, and the amount of effort it took for the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe to convince anybody onto their side, really. um the it was a lot of like the character moments that got cut, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah.
But those were some of the strengths were moments that were cut out of this too, and there was a lot of really good character dynamics in this whole story.
Yeah, definitely. And it just like how it kind of like slowly builds up to what is actually going on in the story. Like for the first 10 minutes of the story, you could think it's just a historical, and then you see
Yep.
the general using like his video caller. And then it's like the second episode is when they were called side rats, I think is what they called them.
The Sid Rats,
Yeah, that's
the
what
Sid
first showed
Rats
up.
just TARDIS backwards.
Yep.
I had to. I paused it so I could laugh at that. That was so funny to me. I
Yeah.
was not expecting them to go and do that, and that's just so silly.
Funny to think like the war chief gave him this technology and he just decided, I'm just going to call it TARDIS backwards.
So funny.
But then yeah, when that shows up and it's using like the exact same audio as the TARDIS, so you know that like something's going on
Yep.
here. And then slowly.
Yeah, no, but I love how subtle it is with it too. Like they don't just immediately call it a TARDIS right away. It's like the sound of the doors opening is
Yeah.
familiar. The materializing or dematerializing sound is familiar, but not quite exactly the same. And like there's a bunch of little cues they give that make you think, are they just reusing sound effects for budget?
Yeah.
Or is there more to this? And as it kind of goes on, you start piecing it all together, and you're like, okay, no, this is indeed a lot bigger than it seems. And I love how the very first time you see the second Doctor really interact with it, you see how like nervous and stressed he is over it, because he's worked out almost instantly what this is, what
Yeah.
this means.
Has to be one of his people.
Mm-hmm.
And the Doctor uses John Smith for the first time here. Well, I guess second, but he willingly uses it
Yes.
for the first time here. And then the
Yes.
screwdriver comes. Sonic screwdriver is also back, and he uses it as an actual screwdriver.
That was a great scene, actually. That was a great scene till they try to convince somebody to.
Yeah. Oh, and there was Jamie joked
It's a
about
shame.
like the Doctor said he needs to pick a lock, and Jamie joked like, "Are you going to use a tuning fork this time?" I love that too.
Yeah, no, all the callbacks were really well done.
Yeah. Then we also have the War Chief, and if you watch the colorization version, you might have noticed they used the Masters theme.
Yeah, that really surprised me that they we went and used the Masters theme, especially since that theme they use is more so specifically associated with John Sims Master more than
Yeah.
anyone else. But even still, it's interesting because I know the War Chief probably wasn't originally designed to be the Master, and I'm sure extended media probably makes it ambiguous. Is he? Isn't he? But I think it's interesting that by doing so, they very much make a stance there, and them saying, no, you know what? Yeah, this is the Master.
Yeah, it's been a long fan theory that the War Chief is the Master, and like different expanded media has definitively said they are, and others have definitively said they are not the same. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's ambiguous, and then the War Games in Color just decided that they support that theory.
Yeah. I like that, though, actually. I actually do like that. I wish they didn't quite make it as obvious with the empowering music.
Yeah.
But I like that they do that because I think it makes it interesting that we don't have multiple Time Lords that are just trying to do the exact same thing, because that's very much a plot the Master would try and,
Yeah.
and use, that we know him for. It's not like the Monk, where the Monk had like a very different plan than other Time Lords typically would,
Yeah.
or like than what like the Master would have. Like this was a Master plan, and I like that they linked it to him because I think it adds more to his character. When you don't have a bunch of other Time Lords trying to do the same thing, I guess the Master just happens to be the one that's good at it or something.
Yeah.
Like only he would be this deranged. Only he would be the one to do this.
And then they also had, in War Games Color, they had the regeneration sound effect after he got shot. So you could figure out
Yeah.
that he survived.
Yep, that's their way of showing that he survived. Yeah. No, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
And I know the Roger Delgado Master is supposed to be the final incarnation in a regeneration cycle, so there is enough room for there to be earlier masters.
Yeah, that's true.
I liked how they recognize each other immediately too, which is just kind of funny that like that's how the Doctor had to run because the War Chief looked at him and just like, I know who you are.
Yeah, they instantly recognize each other, even if they've never encountered these faces specifically. They, it's like they say in the modern era. Like typically, like Time Lords will recognize each other. Like,
Yeah.
right away. They're able to tell.
Yeah.
I think the War Chief was a really well done villain, though. I really liked his character, and I liked how, though he was like a major villain, technically he wasn't like the main villain. He was responsible for a lot of things, but I like how everything kind of played out. Of he was on his own side with everything.
Yeah. And definitely very master-like of just trying to convince the Doctor to join him.
Yep, exactly. And we'll see a lot more of that to come in the future.
Yeah. We're only like a little over a season away from getting to meet the Master.
Yeah.
The premiere of season
But
7 or season 8 for that.
I will say though, while we're talking highly of the War Chief, I didn't really like the Warlord that much.
Yeah, he was a little odd, I felt.
I just felt like they didn't do enough with him to make him feel as threatening as he was supposed to be. And everything about the way he handled his character, he did not come across like someone trying to be like supreme emperor kind of thing, someone trying to be like the leader of it all. He really didn't come across as a man with power at all.
Yeah.
Other than just the fact that people listened to him. His demeanor, the way he presented himself, all of that, none of it really screamed like evil warlord leader at all to me.
Yeah. You get like the feeling that he's like very egotistical, but
Yeah.
not necessarily a great leader.
Yeah.
I think
So him being like the true villain of it all and the one behind it all and the one that has to face the wrath of the Time Lords felt a little weird to me. I wasn't like against it, but I fully expected the War Chief was gonna kill him and overthrow him, and then he was gonna be the one to have to face the wrath of the Time Lords. So
Yeah.
the fact that it was the Warlord there in the end, I was like, I mean, he didn't really do anything. Like
Yeah.
he himself didn't really do anything this entire story, but all right.
I feel like you have an issue with trying to build up a new villain when he only shows up like halfway through the story. And you have like such a strong villain already there.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the War Chief is the one everyone remembers and not the Warlord.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I also just find it funny
think,
that
yeah.
like the Sid rats are controlled by moving magnets around on a board, which is just so funny.
I love that. I love that. That's very much the fun, cheesy, low budget Doctor Who of the classics.
Yeah.
But they played with that in such a fun way that I think just makes it interesting to look at and fun.
Yeah.
You know.
And then the Doctor Doctor steals some of the magnets and now they're safe.
Like it's really silly, but I liked how it was done, and that was for all their tech too. Like the way the processing units function was
Yeah.
also with like the magnets. But I loved how it was just like a matter of like moving magnets to the right places because they were like the circuits and everything. But
Yeah.
it's silly, it's low budget, but it gets the job done in just the right ways.
Yeah.
What do we think of Carstairs and Jennifer? Since they were kind of pseudo companions for at least half the story for at least one of them.
I thought they were fun characters. I definitely enjoyed having them there. It's a bit of a shame that Jennifer just disappears halfway through the story, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wish that she stuck around. I don't really understand why she just disappeared and stayed gone, but everything about Carstairs made me wonder if he's kind of the precursor to having like the Brigadier be like a recurring character constantly, like
Yeah.
having him be like such good friends with the Doctor and like really like a companion basically, even though he doesn't travel in the TARDIS. Like it makes me wonder if Carstairs was one of like the precursors to that, because Carstairs very much feels like that trope we've come to expect of he's a soldier, he doesn't trust the Doctor earns his trust, and now he trusts the Doctor like unconditionally. And
Yeah.
he would lay down his life for the Doctor, but he's still a soldier first and foremost, and that's very much the identity we know the Brigadier takes on.
Yeah. I mean, this story is it's written by Terrence Dix and Malcolm Hulk, and Terrence Dix is our script editor going forward. So yeah, they probably did that intentionally because they knew what they were doing
Yeah.
next season.
Yeah, I think so. It feels like it's to warm us up to the idea of someone like that being so close with the Doctor,
Yeah.
so often,
Yeah.
and I like that. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. I did also just find it funny, at the beginning, Jamie doesn't know to like play along, and it's like a thing he's always been doing. Like, anytime the Doctor's trying to be like, you need to pretend to be a different person, he never gets it. But then he finally does at the very end, when he has to pretend to be brainwashed. Finally, he figures out to play along with what the Doctor's saying.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Finally, after all this time, it might be because he just had to do it a few other times.
Yeah.
That he pieced together under the context of the current situation. But it was pretty funny to see that he finally understood, and he got to be the one to tell someone else, "Why can't you play along like the rest of us?"
Yeah. Villard doesn't know how to play along properly.
No. No. The characters were great, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that goes for like everyone, including the main cast. Like they were all fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, and Patrick Troughton's son was in this episode. His son,
Oh, really?
David, who also goes on to be the professor in the 10th Doctor episode Midnight. He was Private Moore, who's like the guy that was guarding the monocle guy, ended up
Oh.
shooting him.
Oh, okay.
Funny that
Inter-
they technically worked together, but I don't think their characters ever interacted.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did not know that.
He was also like a guard, I think, in Enemy of the World, but he was just like a background guard that didn't have a name.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I also did not realize he's a professor in Midnight. That's funny.
Yeah, his other son was in Last Christmas. He was like the professor in that episode. I think Michael's
Oh,
that
okay.
other son. And then one of them, I don't know which one, but one of them's doing the second Doctor in Big Finish now as well. Which
That's fun.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Just get
yeah,
his son
if
to do
they're
it.
able to, if they're able to replicate his voice and like mannerisms, they know their dad well.
Yeah. Yeah, but then towards the end we get to see Time Lords. And it
With
was
some weird powers.
it was fascinating ideas that they had for the Time Lords here.
I think a lot of it definitely went on to shape the Time Lords as we know them, like these beings that, had the secret of time travel. They believe they're above everything else, and they feel they're the ones that can, make all these judgments.
Yeah.
That's very much the Time Lords we know. Even now, they just kind of went mad with that power eventually.
Yeah.
But I think they definitely had some weird powers in here too, like whatever it was they did with their eyes,
Yeah. I mean,
whatever sort of light vision.
like the Doctor has like he can like break into people's minds and stuff in Modern Who. So I guess it's a similar idea, just a bit executed differently.
Yeah, it definitely feels like everything they've established that the Time Lords can do in modern Doctor Who started here.
Yeah.
Like it definitely feels like because they definitely like went through a bunch of things here. They went through regeneration, forced regeneration. They went through some weird like mind things like that. They went through how they can basically like trap everything in time in a bubble. They went through how they can like mass send like everything back to their original times. Like they did a lot of
Yeah.
things that we've come to know Time Lords can do beyond this point. So this really is like such a defining moment.
Yeah. And the main Time Lord was also the same actor as Gulliver from The Mind Robber, which is just a bit funny.
That is pretty funny, actually.
Apparently, Expanded Universe has said that like Gulliver in that episode was actually the same dude, and he was like undercover.
Sure.
Weird.
Sure. Okay.
Because the same actor also plays a Time Lord in a later story, who's not like explicitly the same Time Lord, but not explicitly a different Time Lord. So he kind of becomes more important later on.
Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, I liked all the Time Lord scenes in this.
Oh yeah, the Time Lords are great. The Time Lords were really great, and I'm glad we properly had them introduced. I mean, this is the first time we really have them as Time Lords.
Yeah.
And we have, the race properly established. And I think it's actually really cool that that they had this strong of a start in a way that makes them feel very much their own identity. They are not necessarily good or bad.
Yeah. I did also find it funny
At least
that
they don't believe it.
they just reused shots of the TARDIS from other episodes when they were trying to escape. They just reused the
Yeah.
shot of landing on the ocean. They reused the shot of it covered in webs.
That they did.
And then the Doctor explains that he left Gallifrey because he was so bored, which is very Doctor-like.
Yeah, that is very much what the Doctor would do. Wants to go out and see, and I mean, like, I feel like every Doctor's given a different reason for why,
Yeah.
if they even remember it. But I think it really does come down to wanting adventure.
Yeah, it's just very boring just having to watch the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was playing cards when he was waiting for his sentencing, which was also funny.
He keeps doing that. He keeps playing cards while he's
He
waiting.
just always has cards with him. Oh,
He's always ready to start gaming.
yeah. I also liked how like summoning the Time Lords is just like putting squares on the ground and then meditating to turn it into a cube.
But it's kind of funny because that's kind of similar to an idea we saw in, I think it was the Matt Smith era, though, where there's like the message cubes or whatever they were.
Yeah.
Where they hold like a psychic message, basically. That's basically what he did there, and I think
Yeah.
that's actually really cool that they play up that idea even more later on. So that's yet another idea of like something established here that the Time Lords can do that they didn't exactly retcon. They just changed how they went about it and built upon it for the future.
Yeah. And then I just loved like his whole speech when he's talking to the Time Lords. He says like
It was very good.
they're above criticism. You're above criticism, aren't you?
Yeah, the sass that he kind of had with it was great. Although I will criticize the Doctor for the very first thing he decides to tell them about being the Quarks and the Yetis.
Yeah. He,
It was a little strange first picks.
yeah. He has to build up to the bigger ones, I guess.
I guess he has to build up to the Daleks.
Apparently, they wanted to use the Crotons as well, but the costumes for the Crotons were not in good condition, so they weren't in there. 'Cause
Honestly, I thought they were all just reused footage.
Yeah.
So
in the original, they filmed new scenes for them, and then in the War Games in Color, they borrowed some clips from
yeah.
them.
Gotcha.
I guess War Games in Color, they just wanted to be able to colorize like other episodes briefly, just to show.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then they actually agree that like maybe it's okay for you to interfere, but we're gonna just trap you on Earth for a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting that his sentencing is very specifically like, it's mostly that we're forcing you to regenerate, and maybe you're right, so we're gonna let you defend this one place that you're very familiar with.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is. It really is, actually. It's probably a big turning point for them and their people, too.
Yeah.
Doing that.
Well, I mean, they've basically explained that like now they understand that Daleks are the most evil thing in the universe. So in a way, this kind of leads into the war or the Time War eventually.
Eventually, yeah.
'Cause this is them being introduced to the Daleks, and then they keep an eye on the Daleks. And yep, we all know how that goes down.
Oh, man. Yeah. That'll be interesting. Watching, like, everything leading up to that moment over the years.
Yeah. And then that trial also had more changes in the War Games in Color, where when they showed his other faces, they just used the Modern Who doctors.
Yeah, they just picked all the Modern Who doctors for those. I kind of wish they just picked any doctor like fourth onwards
Yeah.
instead of just the modern ones.
And
It feels a little too tongue-in-cheek that they picked like only modern doctors for that.
yeah,
But
I found it funny though that the 13th Doctor shot has her with the Timeless Child fob watch, which
yeah,
like that has lore implications that they're like teasing him with that.
yeah, yeah. It's a little. I don't know. It's kind of like in modern era Rogue when they had all the headshots of the doctors kind of circling around him.
Yeah.
And they picked some really weird instances for some of them.
Yeah,
I think it's just kind of a case of they kind of struggled with picking good shots of the doctor to use at times like that.
yeah. And then I guess that also sort of implies that like they know which faces he'll have in the future.
Well, yeah, time.
Yeah.
So. Well, though it's weird to think that they would know which ones would come post Time War if they don't know about the Time War. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, then there's also
It's more just tongue-in-cheek references, but yeah.
yeah, and then that's also like the companions are leaving in as part
Yeah.
of that whole thing. And I know like past companions we've had the issue of like it didn't feel like they were going to leave in this story. But that made it really work well in this story, I feel. That like you never got the feeling that either of them wanted to leave the TARDIS. And then they're just forced to leave. So it works.
Yeah, and not only were they forced to leave, they at least got to say goodbye.
Yeah.
In the process.
And I liked it, like, with Jamie and the Doctor, where Jamie's like, well, no, we don't have to leave. And he's just like, goodbye, Jamie. Just goodbye.
Yeah.
It's just, we're not fighting anymore.
Yeah.
And then,
And then Jamie immediately goes back to a fight.
yeah. And then they both lose most of their memories of the Doctor.
I'm glad they remember their first adventure with him before they went. In the TARDIS.
Yeah.
I'm glad they remembered that at least. And I know there's the Tales of the TARDIS with them, and I'm
Yeah.
sure they get their memories back of it, or they slowly get their memories back over time or something like that. But still, I think the fact that they did not fully forget the Doctor, like some other companions have over the years,
Yeah.
or will over the years, it's nice to see that they remember the first adventure at least. They remember who he is and what he meant to them at first,
Yeah.
which is, the most important part of, like, starting it all.
Yeah, the Tales of the TARDIS says that, like, specifically because they're in the memory TARDIS, now they have their memories, but they didn't before they went in there. And then it's unclear if they will have them after they leave.
When they leave there.
They don't give
Yeah,
you
I
a specific
see.
answer for that.
Mm-hmm.
But they say that they sort of remember in the, like, how it helped them grow as people and stuff. Like, that is still there.
Mm-hmm. The lessons they learned are still there, but they just may not remember how exactly they learned
Yeah.
them.
The Tales of TARDIS also said that Zoe named her son James, and she never realized it was after Jamie.
Aw.
Neat.
That's nice, actually. I like that.
And Jamie has, like, I think he had, like, 15 grandkids or something, he said.
Oh my gosh.
He had, like, 5 kids, and then they all had grandkids.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And then Zoe becomes the president. They don't say what she's the president of, but they say that she's now in her 3rd term as president of something.
Oh. All right. Interesting. Good for her.
Yeah. But yeah, I like their ending. It's tragic in a good way. Tragic in a way that, like,
Yeah.
all of Modern Who companions have, but I liked it that it's different for Classic Who.
Yeah, it's definitely probably the best ending for companions we've had since Ian and Barbara,
Yeah.
I would say. Because all the other ones we've had since felt kind of forced, or like there was some level of, recasting involved and contracts ending and things that felt like it was kind of a last minute, well, this doesn't really make sense. But
Yeah.
here, even though it is kind of a last minute, there's kind of a build up to it. The Doctor's already ready to say bye to them, to try to leave the Time Lords, to try to evade the Time Lords.
Yeah.
And he changes as well. So it kind of is fitting as a mark of the end of an era for all of them to leave together, essentially.
Yeah. But yeah, and then he does regenerate. Well, you don't see the regeneration in the original, but then in the new one you do.
Yeah, and in color we actually get to see it, and it also ends with the first shot from the next Doctor, which you don't get in the original.
Yeah.
I was actually very surprised by that. I was very surprised that the original it actually just ends on the who or what will he regenerate into?
Yeah. I think John Pertwee hadn't been cast in the role when they filmed it. I think it was like around the
Okay.
time it was being filmed
That would
was
explain it.
when the casting was happening, so they just didn't have the chance to like get him on set. Because
Yeah, I
th-
see.
this is the first time where they take a 6 month break after the season's over, so they didn't need him right away.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The new generation scene just felt a bit weird because it's like obviously CGI, but like what else can you do, right?
Yeah, yeah, it
Like-
definitely felt a bit different than than the production of everything else we had up to that point. Other than
Yeah.
the obvious like regeneration transition scene that we have, but like the way it was put together and Pertwee there, yeah, it did feel a bit weird.
Yeah,
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
yeah.
But it did feel a little weird.
And technically, this is the only regeneration in which he's sitting on a chair, because in all of Classic Who, he's always lying on his back, and then in all of Modern Who, they're always standing up. So
Yep.
funnily, it's just different. And then at the end,
You got to rest.
at the end, you also notice that like the time thing on the TARDIS was flipping between 1970 and 1980, and that's because
Yeah.
the original intention is that it's 1980, but then later stories kind of messed with the timing. So
Oh. Okay.
it's like it's
So
supposed
it's
to
actually back to the 70s.
it's supposed to be 1980, but then like I think in like a Seventh Doctor story, the Brigadier comes back, and then they kind of say that like he's been retired for 20 years, and that doesn't
Oh.
make sense unless these stories are at 1970. So it's like
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, that's the unit dating controversy that you might have heard of. So
I see. I see.
it's supposed to be
Unit
1980
involved in some sort of, Okay.
because like we know in the invasion they mentioned like if you do the time for all the other ones, like the first Yeti story was 1935, then Travers
Yep.
said it's been 40 years, and then in the invasion they said it's been 4 years, so that story should have been 1979. So then now it's 1980.
Yeah. Okay. That's what it should be, at least.
Yeah. Because they wanted, I think basically they just wanted to be able to have like a little bit of futuristic tech for unit, so that's probably why they just said like it's 10 years in the future.
Yeah. Instead of just being, the exact same modern day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
And apparently there's a series of novels that was largely inspired by Jennifer's interactions with Jamie in this story called The Outlander, which is about
Oh.
a British nurse who travels back in time to have a romance with somebody named Jamie Fraser, which I just find funny. Where it's like, clearly
That is
this
actually really
writer
funny.
had a crush on Jamie in Doctor Who, and just like wrote a whole series of novels about it, and then it got a TV adaptation, and Fraser Hines was in like one episode of it. So it all came together.
Wait, that's hilarious.
I think he was in
That's
like
hilarious, actually.
in season 1 he had like a minor role in that show or something like that.
That's so funny.
Yeah, they said that like it's very heavily inspired by Jennifer's interactions with Jamie here, where he's like trying to protect her, but not in the best ways. So it's like they gotta teach each other.
There's not even that many scenes of that. Is what's really
there's
funny.
like one scene of it really where it's like no, you're a woman, you can't come
Yeah.
with us.
Someone was very inspired.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's really all I had about the episode itself.
Yeah, it was really, really strong. Like, it was
Yeah.
a really, really strong story. I don't have any other notes myself. I thoroughly enjoyed, like, the entire story all the way through. The mysteries,
Yeah.
the pacing, the reveals. I thought it was all very, very well done. All the character writing, and it was great to get through.
Yeah. I feel like it's probably one of the strongest Second Doctor stories. If not even the best one.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we have a lot to go through for like everything ending here. So season 6
Yeah.
thoughts overall. I guess we will start with.
Yeah, I definitely think this is my favorite of the season. I think
Yeah.
it's such a strong end, and it's some of the best of all of the characters involved that we've had.
Yeah. I feel like my second favorite would probably be like, or I guess the Mind Robber. Yeah, Mind Robber would be second favorite, and then like maybe Invasion for third.
That's fair.
The Invasion was
I,
definitely
I think I would rate it the same. Yeah.
the Invasion was a bit messy at times, but I also just like having like Unit there and the Brigadier. Like,
Yeah.
they were a great addition.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, Mind Robber was just so different, so it was very good.
Mm-hmm.
So creative. They had a lot of ideas there.
And hopefully those are ideas that we see them revisit.
Yeah. But yeah, season 6 I thought was a bit messy at times, but it was overall pretty good, I would say.
It was overall fairly strong. It had its weaker moments for sure, but I think like as a whole, it was largely better than a lot of the ones before it.
Yeah. It's definitely better than the first Doctor's final season.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I quite enjoyed this season as a whole, I would say.
Yeah, I really liked this one. It was a lot of fun, and even like the low points weren't that bad.
Yeah. The low points were just that like they weren't unique, right?
Yeah,
Just stories that were like pretty basic that we've already heard, but they were still like relatively well put together.
yeah, exactly. Or only available as loose cannon reconstructions, which
Yeah.
definitely like diminishes a bit of it. But
Yeah. I hope they do an animation for the Space Pirates. I would definitely like to see that.
that would be nice. I would appreciate a rewatch of it under that circumstance. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like right now they're focused on the Hartnell era for animations, though. So I guess
Yeah,
we'll see.
they're doing. They're currently doing. I think the Savages.
Yeah, the Savages, it
So-
released in Britain like last week, but I think it's
Okay,
in North
okay.
America it comes out in May, I believe. So I guess we'll see what they do next.
Yeah.
It is also nice to be past all the missing episodes now, though.
Yes, it's gonna be much smoother going forward,
Yeah.
and that's something to really look forward to.
Technically, some of the John Pertwee stories were missing, like, a long time ago, but then they found them all. I think some of them they found only in black and white, but then they had to, like, restore the color. They found a method to do that easily. Because,
Huh,
like,
okay.
since they were already color stories, they, like, you could just, like, find a picture of it and then just, like, be able to fill it in a lot easier.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I think
yeah,
they-
I see what you mean.
They found, like, an automatic process to be able to put the color back in. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. And then we said goodbye to everybody. I guess starting with the companions is maybe a bit better than starting with the Doctor.
Yeah, let's start with the companions, and I think we should start with Zoe first.
Yeah.
Because she's here the least, so to say.
Yeah.
The shortest amount of time.
I think she was a fascinating concept for a character, of her being like so mathematically minded, although I feel like that didn't really come into play all that much.
I think it worked out well in the sense of she got a lot of screen time and a lot of things to do.
Yeah.
Even though her mathematical skills and good memory only really came up when they wanted it to, there were still a lot of times where like the Doctor trusted her to be the one to come with him, or it wasn't just girls stay here, the men and I are gonna go take care of this. Like
Yeah.
we really started to move away from that with Zoe.
Yeah.
There was a lot of moments where they actually was like, Jamie, you stay here. Zoe, you come with me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a first.
Yeah.
That's kind of a first.
I feel like her and Jamie are a very
And I
good.
think that's remarkable.
Her and Jamie are a very good TARDIS team, just because like they're so different. 'Cause
Yes.
Zoe's
And they're constantly teaching each other new things.
yeah, Zoe's from the future, Jamie's from the past, and then Zoe's like the smart one, and Jamie's the strong one. It really works out.
They complement each other really well to balance out the TARDIS team. And
Yeah.
I really like their dynamic as well, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of a shame that she doesn't get to keep her memories, just because like her whole arc was like getting more used to interacting with people and stuff. And like I guess that's all gone now. Although,
Supposedly,
yeah,
I imagine, you know, as Tales of the TARDIS taught, like, they kind of, like, they kept the lessons they learned, so to say. They just
yeah,
didn't, they don't really understand, like, where they came from, kind of thing. I fully believe the growth that she had from all of that remained with her.
yeah,
She just may not really understand what that turning point was. Maybe she believes it was just meeting the Doctor and stopping the Cybermen, and that one must have been really impactful to her. I don't know, but
yeah,
because that was the one that really made her come to terms with, like, how people treat her, how people view her, and why she wants to be treated differently. So
yeah. I guess she becomes a president, so she has to understand like how people work now.
hopefully,
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully she's a good president.
hopefully,
And then Jamie, I felt, is a character that kind of like changed a lot over the course of his era. It makes sense because he's here so long. Like
yeah.
this season,
He's definitely, like, one of the longest running companions.
yeah, this season very much played up like him not being very smart. I feel, and I feel like the previous seasons didn't do that as much.
Yeah, they definitely played that up a lot more this season because of the presence of Zoe.
Yeah.
And I think they used it as a way to emphasize Zoe's intelligence and the Doctor's intelligence compared to Zoe's and the way they're relative to each other. So that just meant making Jamie the dumb one
Yeah,
more so. Because before it really was more so just he's ignorant to things because he's from further in the past and these things explained to him more.
yeah,
But they made him a bit more modernized this season because I guess he's just been with the Doctor so long he gets a lot more now. But now it was more so he is just kind of dumb in certain regards.
yeah. And then this,
So they did change that a little bit. I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing.
yeah,
But when you're watching it like this and you're paying attention to the character growth, it is a notable change.
yeah. And then the season gave him a sexist attitude at times as well, which he
Yeah.
definitely didn't really have before. Which is a bit funny that like it came into play in his final season.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but at least it's played to humor. It's played to humor, and he's shot down every time.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it's never really played up like he's in the right for it, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Jamie. I did find it a bit funny though that like people talk about how the Second Doctor and Jamie are gay for each other so much, and I feel like you could read into it and feel that, but I feel like it's not as obvious as people implies it is. Like
Yeah,
sometimes
it
you
doesn't
can feel it.
as obvious as people have led on
Yeah.
to believe.
So-
But that might also be a case of like the people who grew up with this and the kind of queer media that they had back then
Yeah.
versus what you have now is very, very different. So I think it could also just be from a case of what you and I are used to
Yeah.
is so far removed and different from what there was back then. Because back then, that scene of them holding hands while it was played for comedy was kind of the most you could get in some regards.
Yeah, that's true. I think it was also just a matter that like
So
the actors liked playing into that, but the writers never did. I think is largely
Yeah.
what it is. The actors thought it was funny to make them hold hands
Yeah,
and
the-
stuff, but that's about it.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was not something that the writers were thinking about, and it was something that if the actors were thinking about, it was a, hey, this would be funny, and if people want to interpret it a different way, fine.
Yeah.
So be it. It's for fun. And that's okay. But I think it's important that regardless of how people are interpreting it there, I think it's important to note that that was the original intent, that it mostly was for humor instead of for representation.
Yeah.
So as to not devalue what we get nowadays compared to this back then.
Yeah.
Not to diminish what this was, but it's a very different time, it's a very different intent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I
But
like,
I do respect that they had fun with that.
yeah. I like Jamie overall. I think I still prefer Steven over like any other character from Classic Who so far. But Jamie's a good character.
I like Jamie better than Ian, and probably in general, like a lot of the other ones. I do agree. I think I like Steven the best so far
Yeah.
because I think he felt very realistic
Yeah.
in terms of his reactions and like what made him stay when he wanted to leave, things like that. I really like Steven as a companion. I think I would put Jamie right behind him because Jamie also had a lot of that. There were a lot of moments when he wanted to leave, but they just didn't really play into that as much, unfortunately. They made him
Yeah.
kind of just like brush it off very quickly because there were other people that he felt he could protect, and they didn't really ever bring it up again. They kind of just further bolstered the relationship he and the Doctor have, so they're besties, and that's fine. But I would have liked to see a bit more complexity with Jamie's character and how he treats everything, like how we got with Steven.
Yeah. I think it's just nice having just like a companion that's just there for the entire time that you have a doctor.
Yeah.
Like Yaz with 13. I think it's a good dynamic to just have like the same character there with them the whole time.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good dynamic, and I like when we get that. But I also like when we get to see the Doctor with other people, so we get to see other sides of the Doctor and what other people do. So
Yeah.
I'm glad, like, we had Jamie there as a constant while there were other companions coming and going. I'm glad,
Yeah.
same kind of thing with Yaz and with 13, where Yaz was there, but other companions were kind of coming and going at times, because I think it allows an air of familiarity while also an air of new dynamics, and
Yeah.
it lets you balance both of those, so people who may not entirely like the new dynamics still have something they like
Yeah.
of an evolution of an existing dynamic.
In a way, Jamie is like the most modern Who companion that we have so far.
Yeah,
Because he's like,
yeah, I can
especially because like
understand that.
the dynamic in class in Modern Who is very often like this companion would never leave the Doctor unless something happened to force them apart, and that's what happens with
Right.
Jamie. Jamie probably never
Yeah,
would have
that's
left
true.
if he wasn't forced out.
At this point, yeah, he probably never would have.
But we will see. Jamie comes back in the Five Doctors and the Two Doctors, and Zoe also comes back in the Five Doctors. So we will see them again.
Okay. Yeah, so we get to see both of them a little bit more.
Jamie was supposed to be in the Three Doctors, but then he was busy filming something else, so he wasn't in the Three Doctors in the end.
Oh, okay.
And I think he's like only a very short moment. Like he's in the Five Doctors, but not really in it that much, which is why they did the Two Doctors
Yeah.
like a couple years later, so that you could properly
I see,
have the
I
second
see.
Doctor and Jamie together. And then yeah, they also came back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They also came back for Tales of the TARDIS, and both of them are also doing Big Finish these days as well.
Nice.
And Big Finish has taken the idea that they had more stories after this, after the War Games, because there's a thing where like, when they come back in the Two Doctors, they're both very obviously a lot older than they should be. So like,
Yeah.
the idea is that like the trial that we see is like not actually fully accurate to what happened, and they instead like made the Doctor work for them for a little while is the idea that they played with. So like there's the season 6B, which is what everybody calls it, where like
Right.
I know Big Finish has also played into it now, where the second Doctor is forced to work for the Time Lords for a while before they actually forcibly regenerate him. So it's complicated.
Oh, okay.
So you can fit a lot more stories in there.
So it's like he does more. Yeah, you can fit more stories. He does more during that time. Could potentially see the companions again or do more with them during that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're like obviously a lot older when they come back in the future stories, and
Right.
like they don't try to pretend like they don't know what happened in the War Games either. I think like in the Two Doctors they talk about
Okay.
the events
They
of the
don't-
War Games like they already went through it, which doesn't make sense.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So it's not like like time space distortions. It's like it aged them up or something during this time or
No.
some weird science fiction explanation. They just own the fact that no, this is just after that point for them. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like I know that they've basically said that the version of the trial that we see in this episode is like what the Time Lords recorded in the Matrix. So it's not actually what happened.
Okay.
It's just what they want people to think what happened. Because they don't want people to know that, like, they forced the second Doctor to do these other things for them.
Damn, they put the second Doctor back in Division?
I mean, that is also a theory people have. That's why they say that the future of Doctor goes between the two of them. Because they say that the future of Doctor is season 6B. Although I don't
Interesting.
think that theory makes sense for what they implied about the fugitive doctor, but that's what people say.
There's yeah, there's definitely reasons why that doesn't work,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a point where you could work that in if you wanted to.
You could also say that maybe a bi-generation happened here, and that explains everything nicely.
Oh yeah.
Because we have bi-generation now, and you could just say that, like, the second Doctor just kind of continue to exist, and they're just like, oh, I guess we'll keep you, and we'll put the third Doctor on Earth.
Yeah. Second Doctor is a prisoner of the Time Lords having to do their bidding.
Yeah. But yeah, this is also the end of the second Doctor. He
I
had a lot of
loved.
he had a lot of strong stories, I would say. And
Yeah.
he's a very good actor.
I loved how much of the Doctor's identity that we know and love from any era really starts here with Troughton. Really starts
Yeah.
here with the second Doctor. Like, yes, the seeds for it are there with the whimsy of William Hartnell's Doctor at first. He's the one that started it all. But so much of the traits that we know and love from the Doctor, especially in modern era, starts with Troughton. Starts with the second
Yeah.
Doctor here. So much of the silliness, so much of the heroism that he has. And I loved seeing so much of like any other Doctor really like show up in him here,
Yeah.
and he's really the one truly behind it all, because he's the one that's like really truly the protagonist here, more than the first Doctor ever was with it, and that's so fascinating to me. I
Yeah.
really didn't know or expect that going in.
Yeah. He definitely had to come in with a very strong portrayal of the Doctor, because obviously the show wouldn't have really survived recasting the lead unless the replacement did like a very strong job, and he definitely came in and did an amazing job.
He did fantastic.
Yeah.
I could not believe just how much I was enjoying like every episode because of him, primarily.
Yeah.
Like, even like the weakest episodes, he had some great moments. Like he's a fun Doctor, and I would like I want to see like more of him, and
Yeah.
we can't.
I mean, hey, maybe sometime they'll find some of the missing episodes, and you'll be able to see his portrayal and knows better. If we get lucky,
Yeah, it's true.
if we get
It's
lucky,
true.
we might find some.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, his era is definitely a
But
bit harmed by the fact that like so much of it is not live action, and like Patrick Troughton's portrayal
Yeah.
is physical. It's largely physical. Like you need to see.
it really is. It really is.
Yeah, you need to see him actually doing it in order to get the full idea of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. But I understand now why he's so beloved, even
Yeah.
despite that. Why he's a big fan favorite, even despite how much of the episodes are lost. Because this was an absolute joy to get through.
Yeah. He's quirky in all the best ways, and he's heroic in all the best ways. It's definitely like the modern idea of who the Doctor is. Starts here, largely.
Yeah, exactly. And I really never expected that. I really thought that was gonna start with like the fourth Doctor or something, because he's the
Yeah.
one that people always equate with that. People always compare like David Tennant, for example, to the fourth Doctor, or even Matt Smith to the fourth Doctor. Like the fourth Doctor is the one that always typically gets like the comparisons made with
Yeah.
modern ones, and then you'll have like, oh yeah, but Peter Capaldi's a lot like the third Doctor, for example, is like the only real difference. But it like all of them really do start here with
Yeah.
the second Doctor. Like I think like every single Doctor after Troughton had to follow this up and pull from this identity of the Doctor, because this is when the identity really gets established that way.
Yeah. I feel like the 11th Doctor in particular is like very second Doctor.
Yeah,
They're
Yep.
quirky in similar ways.
I think 13 as well.
Yeah. But yeah,
It's great,
I would say
honestly.
I
It's
definitely I think I like the second Doctor more than the first Doctor.
Yeah,
Like
I do too. And that's not to knock William Hartnell.
Yeah,
But
I think-
William Hartnell worked well with everyone around him, as all of them is the main cast, whereas
yeah.
Patrick Troughton really shines as the Doctor.
Yeah. I think the first Doctor when he shines, he does a really good job. The issue is that he just doesn't get the opportunity to shine that much, just because like
Yeah.
his health wasn't very good, especially towards the end. Like when he has a good
Right.
episode, he has a really good episode, but then a lot of it's just like he's part of the cast and not like the star of the show. Whereas the second Doctor is like always the
Yeah,
star.
that did come out quite a bit.
Yeah. Definitely two very different feeling Doctors. I guess what would be like your top few second Doctor stories?
In no particular order. I mean, probably not surprising at all. You have the War Games, the Mind Robber, Enemy of the Worlds, like all of those, and the performances that
Yeah.
Patrick Troughton brings to those were so good.
Yeah.
But also like Tomb of the Cybermen.
Yeah, that was a good one too.
That was also like a really good one. But I think the one that actually like not like the whole story, but like very specific moments really stand out to me in the most recent. The name escapes me. The most recent Ice Warrior story that we watched, like last time, basically.
Seeds of Death.
Yeah, Seeds of Death.
Yeah.
Because he has that moment where he's willing to sacrifice himself to go to the moon and stop the Ice Warriors, give them a chance, but also stop them. He has that moment that is so modern Doctor.
Yeah.
That felt almost out of place because of just how modern it felt for like as a fan of the modern show, that it felt almost out of place because of the way they handled that, and I loved that. That was one of my favorite moments of Troughton, I think.
Yeah.
But so many stories were so good. Like like even like way earlier on when we first meet Victoria and he's having fun with the dizzy Daleks, you
Yeah.
know, like there's so many funny moments he has.
Yeah. I would say I definitely really liked the War Games, the Mind Robber, and Enemy of the World a lot as well. I would also like to
Yep.
shout out Power of the Daleks, because sure,
Yes.
it's his first story, but it's a very, very strong first story.
Yeah,
He just-
it's a great first story because it still secures him as the Doctor.
Yeah. And I just really liked the Dalek stories that we're getting in Classic Who so far.
Mhm.
It's a bit of a shame that we're not with them for a few seasons, but they did a very good job.
That's okay.
They did a very good job, I
It
feel like.
means
in
when they
all of
come,
them.
it means when they come back, it'll hopefully be a strong return.
Yeah. And I guess technically we're not that far away, because, I think it's season 9 they come back in. And
Okay, yeah, that's not too
season
far.
7 and 8 are not very long. They're a lot shorter than the ones we've been seeing. Season 7, there's only 4 stories in that.
Well, a lot changes at this point in general.
Yeah.
A lot changes at this point.
Yeah.
Like, Doctor Who becomes a very different show from this point onwards.
Yep. Seasons are about half as long as the ones we've been watching so far now.
Yeah, so it's not going to take us very long to get there then.
Yeah. I am excited for the Third Doctor era, though, because there's a lot of important times in there as well. We're meeting the
Oh,
Master
yeah.
very soon.
We meet the Master, Joe Grant, and Sarah Jane Smith are both
Yeah.
very, very important and iconic companions in the entirety of the Whoniverse. So
Yep.
we're meeting them soon enough, and those are also going to be very, very big.
Yeah. This first season has its own companion. I think her name is Liz Shaw. And then
I think so. Yeah.
Joe Grant is 8 to 10. And then Sarah Jane Smith comes in 11.
Okay.
Got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, we really do.
I guess we would touch on some news about the new season, but since this episode is going up after the premiere has already started, I don't really think we need to talk about that much. Because there was
No,
news.
not really.
There was news, but by the time you're listening to this, you've already seen the first episode.
Yeah, it's a bit outdated for you at this point, so
Yeah.
no reason to. Just the reminder that we will be talking about the brand new season currently airing, season 2 of Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor, after the entire season finishes.
Yeah. So for the next episode, we will be watching Spearhead from Space, which is a 4-parter. and then Doctor Who and the Silurians, which is a 7-parter. So Spearhead from
Alright.
Space will introduce us to the Autons, which are, from
Ooh.
Rose, the episode. And then, obviously, Doctor Who and Silurians, you can guess what's going to be in that one. Judging by
I
the
don't
name.
know.
And then, yeah, that's... So, a 4-parter and a 7-parter, and everything from this point forward is on Tubi TV. I know BBC iPlayer, like, they've removed random episodes here and there, so most of everything's on BBC iPlayer as well. But yeah. And yeah, that's
Smooth sailing from here.
start of the Third Doctor era, and we're going to be with UNIT a lot now. So,
It's gonna be a good time.
yeah. The Brigadier is basically a companion now, and Liz Shaw, like I mentioned.
All right.
So,
Exciting.
yep. So if you'd like to join us on our journey, we have a Patreon where for $1 a month you can get into our Discord and also get early access episodes. And then for $5 a month you can watch live as we record, where there will be a live text chat that we'll chat with. So you can tell us that the War Games actually sucks if you want. Yeah, as a reminder, just make sure to watch Spearhead from Space and Doctor Who and the Silurians before our next episode. You can find them on BBC iPlayer or Tubi TV. I've been Joy. You can find me on social media at Joy Content.
And I've been Tris. You can find me on social media at ToonTris.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.